is advised.
Hey everyone, this video is brought to you by Audible. Audible is offering you a free audiobook with a 30-day free trial membership. All you need to do is go to audibletrial.com/bgunlocked. The link is in the description below, and now enjoy the video. Hey everyone, welcome back to Board Games Unlocked. Today I'm going to be doing a how to play for Sine Tempore, a sci-fi RPG adventure game by Ludus Magnus Studios. And this game has actually been out for a little bit, but I felt that this was one of those games that I could go out and do a how to play for, because it seems like there are quite a bit of questions about this game and how to even set up the damn thing and what to use and what not to use, and everything that you can do. So I'm going to be doing my best to explain how you play the game, as well as kind of how you at least start the campaign. Now, I won't be going over every little thing. I won't be going over a lot of stuff that's in the the black hole box, which was a lot of their stretch goals. I might touch up on a few of those, but mainly what I will be covering is the base box. And because this is a perfect example of Kickstarter bloat that I can think of right now off the top of my head. So without further ado, what I'm going to do is get into the setup of how you get started for the very first mission of the campaign, and I will be using that first mission kind of as an example of how to play and everything that you do on your turn. So let's go to the setup. Okay, so the first mission, A Warm Welcome, is pretty straightforward in how you set it up. Basically, what you're going to do is you're going to look at the picture that is in the campaign book. So if you take a look at this, it'll show you how to set it up, where the enemies are going to go, where certain terrain is going to go, spawn points, and the deployment zone. And it'll also show you how to set up the rondelle. But basically, you'll find the corresponding tiles. You'll place them where they go. You will find the 3D spot. You will place those there. So in this case, the bushes, you're gonna place where they tell you to, and then the antenna. And then you'll also find the terrain cards. Now these are going to tell you kind of what the terrains do and what you can do with them, and kind of how placement works. But pretty much if you're doing the campaign, you will just put them where they tell you to on the picture. Then you will take spawn points, place them where they are, some resources, some loot things, and then you will also take the 4 characters that are going to be going on the mission. You'll place them on the deployment zone, which is right there. What I have personally done is you will then take the cards that match the enemies that are out on the board. You will place them just where it's easier for probably the person who knows the game the best to be able to read. You will then take the separate decks, which in this case is going to be the resource deck, the Oblivion deck, the Serious Wounds deck, and the enemy spawn deck, and you'll place that within easy reach of whoever. And I mean, that's pretty much the setup, for at least the first part of the setup of the first mission in the campaign. The next thing that you're going to set up is the momentum board. I call it a rondelle, but that's what they call it, is momentum. So this is also something that you will just follow straight out of the mission book. Basically, you will take the tokens of the enemies and of the characters, and you will place them on the different phases. So in this case, you will take the Spriggans, put in phase 1. Then you'll choose 2 heroes of your choice, put them in phase 2. You'll take the Hunters and another hero and put in phase 3, and the 4th hero is going in phase 4. What that board indicates is basically turn order, based off of how many action points that each enemy and hero do. So kind of, it's one of those games where the more you do, the more time it takes for you to do that, and then the slower you're going to go. So, and I'll get into that a little bit more as I explain how to actually play the game, but that is going to be the setup. The other thing that you're going to do is on the middle dial, at the very top right of the mission sheet, so where is it? Right there, it'll say, start and end, and it'll tell you 1-1, and then for this case it says end mission 3-1. That is your timer for the for the mission. So what you'll do is you'll take the phase marker, which is this big arrow, like the big orange and silver one, and you'll put that on phase 1. And then the momentum dial right here is going to be set to 1 as well. So over the course of the game, this will move, and then once it hits phase 12 and then goes to phase 1, then you'll move the inner dial to number 2, and then you will end the mission whenever it hits 3-1. So that's kind of the time track of the whole mission. But that's the second thing that you can set up. The third thing that you can do is you will choose 4 heroes to go on the mission. Now, they do not need to be the same 4 that you picked at the very beginning of the game, or as the campaign goes on, you can choose different heroes to go on the mission, but they're not going to be as leveled or anything like that. But in this case, I chose the first 4 that come in the base game to go on the mission, and basically what you're going to do is you are going to take their board, you will take one of these dials, this is to indicate your threat value, and you will take their starting items. Now, at the beginning of the game, they only have 3 items that you can start with, and they each have an indicated level, which you can find there. Each item comes with 3 different levels, so this family mantle card can be upgraded to a level 2 and a level 3, same with the gun, Moore's wood, yep, and then like Titan plate can also be upgraded. But you will see that over the course of the game, you can actually carry more stuff. You can have equipment, you can have items, you can have different types of things that you can carry with you, and you will also not at the beginning of the campaign, but later on, you will have upgraded abilities that you will equip for each mission, and each character will have tokens that you will slot in these spots to indicate what what abilities that they'll have. And you'll also find the corresponding sheet here. It says the name at the top left of these are basically the skill tree of, in this case, Andromeda 2.0, and then on the back of that it shows what each icon means. Now, one thing you want to do with deciding who's going to go on the mission is you're going to look at special abilities and also potentially their class. And there are 4 different types of classes: Captain, Psychic, Medic, and I don't think it's Scout. But yeah, you might want to min-max who's going on the mission. I'm only just showing you the one just because it's easier for this how to play. But each hero or each champion or whatever they call it has an innate special ability that they already have, and you can actually find what that is at the top left, so you just correspond that. In this case, she is Gynoid, and she could be healed only by skills and equipment, so it'll tell you what they do. So at the beginning of the campaign, you're going to pick your 4, and then each of them are going to have 3 starting equipment to go on the mission. So you'll just set those up, and then, like I said, you'll place their figure on the deployment zone on the map. So that is the third thing that you'll do, and that's basically the setup for the first mission of the campaign. Here I would actually like to explain that there are essentially 2 ways to play Sine Tempore. There is narrative missions and there's explorative missions, or whatever they're called, exploration missions. Whenever you're going through the campaign, it's not just one narrative mission after another. You have to basically conquer certain areas, and you can actually see that in what you have to conquer on this map here. And at the very beginning on the landing zone, you're doing the first mission, and then you'll branch out from there. What I just explained to you is how to set up the first narrative mission, and then after that you have to do exploration missions, complete those, and then after you do a certain number of those, then you can go on to the next narrative mission. And the campaign book does explain that, but for example, you do a warm welcome is your first thing, and then you have to do 2 blue missions, and they're based off of what's called DEFCON levels, and there are 4 levels. So 4 is blue, 3 is, green, I think 2 is yellow, and then, they go in some certain color order. But essentially, to do the second narrative mission, you have to do 2 blue missions. And on the reference sheet here, which the game only comes with one, it does explain how to set up for a narrative mission, also for an exploration mission. But I mean, for the most part, setting up is the same, and you play the same way. It's just a matter of story. And exploration missions, you have a little bit more wiggle room on what's getting set up, and then narrative missions are like, boom, here's what you do. So that I wanted to talk about before actually going into how you play the game. And also, what I am going to do is I'm going to explain how you play the game using only one hero. And since I already showed Andromeda 2.0, that's just what I'm going to continue doing. As you can see, I have the 4 heroes set up. You always do each mission, regardless of narrative or exploration, with 4 heroes. Like, even no matter how many people are actually playing, if you're doing it solo, it's 4 heroes. If you're doing it with 2 people, it's 4 heroes. It doesn't matter. Now, who you send on those missions, that also doesn't matter. But there is actually a very good like player aid on Board Game Geek that I highly recommend you go print out. It is essentially someone created a custom colony phase campaign sheet, and it shows each hero that you can play, and it even includes the ones from the black hole box, with the people from Spaceballs. And so that's on the front. This is how you'll keep track of like your XP, what items you've leveled up, what resources you've carried over. And then on the second page, it goes over the colony phase. But here, I also want to point out that this does show the 4 heroes that you cannot use up until you actually do the mission that unlocks them. There are 4 heroes that you have to do a specific mission to recruit them, and then you can actually add them to your repertoire of heroes. But just for this video, it is Belair, Luperco, Arcade, and Etna. Those are the 4 that you cannot actually just grab out of the box and throw them in. Everyone else you can. But another thing from the black hole box is that Ludus Magnus did a gag stretch goal, or whatever they decide to call it, but it's the 4 heroes from Spaceballs. And they highly recommend, and I would also highly recommend, that if you're playing with those, you do those 4 as their own group. You don't mix and match. You don't put in Andromeda 2.0, Jukas, Alexander, and Burp. Just play with those 4 as their own squad and continue that way. But that is that. Now I'm going to go into how to actually play this game. But essentially, Sine Tempore, you're playing a squad that is finding a new planet to live on. The human race has actually just fucked everything up on their planet. Surprise, surprise. And you are going off to, basically, you found another planet called Primidius 5, I think is how it's pronounced. And then you're just doing missions to conquer that planet and take it over for yourself. But of course, there are indigenous species and people who don't want you to take it from them, and they're fighting back. So that's kind of the story. So let's go into how you actually play. Okay, so before I actually start showing actions that you can do on your turn, I have to explain the character statistics, or the character, not necessarily abilities, but these icons over on the right of every character sheet, because they are incredibly important. These are the attributes, there we go, that you are going to be using a lot of whenever you're going to be doing actions. But probably one of the most important, besides your health, is the very top one, they call it rapidity, which indicates the hero's speed, their order of activation, how many action points they get. Now, action points are important because that's going to determine what you can do on your turn, and because essentially that's your point allocation. To move, it costs an action point. To attack, it costs, depending on how you're attacking, costs multiple action points. So that's the very top one. And this also breaks ties if you're on the momentum board and there's an enemy there. If an enemy has higher rapidity than you, they're gonna activate before you. If you have higher than them, then you'll go before them. If you're tied, well, the enemy goes before you. So that's the very top one. That's rapidity. The second one from the top is called precision. This is your ability, like how many dice you're going to be rolling when using a ranged weapon or throwing objects. Basically, like I said, if with Andromeda 3.0, she luckily has a gun, so she will be rolling at least 3 dice whenever it comes to using that gun. Or if she gets an item that's a grenade, she will use 3 dice to indicate how accurate she is. The very middle one, that one is called physical. So you'll use that when you need to perform an action that requires a physical attribute. So things like attacking with a melee weapon, a close range weapon, moving an object, or your defense. When you are being attacked, that's how many dice you roll to defend against that attack. So in this case, she has 3 defense. She would roll 3 dice plus potentially whatever else that she has in terms of armor or any other ability. So that is it's called physical. Think of it as, it's a pretty decent catch-all because it's not just your defense. If you're hitting with a melee weapon, that is also what counts. The little circle, that is called your mind. This is your intelligence and knowledge, and it's kind of is what used to pass certain tests that require mental actions. These actions can be your psychic ability of the hero, and is also your resistance and ability to launch psychic powers as well as resist psychic powers. So hers is a 1. She would at least roll 1 die to try and potentially use a psychic ability, or if she was being attacked by a psychic ability, this is what you would use to defend against it. And the very bottom one is your health. So pretty straightforward. That's how much damage you can take before you are knocked out. So yeah, those are the stats. Each hero obviously has different ones to pertain to their strengths and some of their weaknesses, but I had to at least talk about those before going into what you can actually do on your turn. Okay, so the other thing that I need to kind of explain are the enemies, because this game does use an AI system so each enemy kind of has their own card and their own stats and their own special abilities that you will want to take into consideration whenever you're going throughout the mission. So they're not they're not too different from the actual heroes. At the top, that is their rapidity as well. That is their action points, just the same. It is the and it's also going to be determined compared to whenever they are resolved, if they're on the same spot on the momentum board as you. Now this other one, this is their control area. This is what's called CA. Basically kind of how aware they are of their surroundings. And whenever you are doing actions and things in their control area, so 8 spaces, surrounding the enemy, they are basically going to compare this number to your threat value and also the threat value of the mission or something that they're supposed to be guarding. So in the very first mission, they are supposed to surround themselves and protect that antenna, the big one that was right in the middle. The mission book gives that antenna a threat value, and in this case it's 4. So as you go around the mission, if you're doing things, you can go to a bush, you can go to a loot crate, you can do all this stuff. As long as your threat value is lower than the threat value of the objective that they have, they will not mess with you. Now, whenever you do certain things that actually affect them, then they'll start doing something. But up until then, they're essentially preoccupied with what they're supposed to be doing. So that is the control area. You also have their physical defense right there. So in this case, the Spriggans is 0. You have their mental defense, which is 0. And then they have their health. So, and up at the top, they have they have their name and kind of some special characteristics of that name. So Primave, Kid, and Tiny. So The tiny kind of indicates it's a special, whatever they call it, contributing factor of whether or not you gain something for actually killing it. In this case, whenever because you can gain threat value throughout the game or throughout the mission, but killing a tiny creature does not give you threat value. But the other icon that is important is the color to the left of that, and the color does indicate kind of their rank. So in Sine Tempore, green represents troop. Then you have orange, which means elite. You have red, which is monster. You have purple, which is leader, and then you have gray, which is a boss. So this indicates a lot of stuff whenever you are making a enemy spawn deck. It might tell you only use, elite monsters or elite enemies. Or in the very first mission, it tells you to make an enemy spawn deck of only using troop-like enemies. So you're going to want to look for enemies that have the green arrow or the green icon next to their name, and you're going to make a troop deck out of that. Then you have their special abilities. So like this case, they have Fire Fury, and then they have Rough Weapon. They also have Shooter, Horde 3, and Climb. So these are just passive abilities that they have. So you're going to want to take all this into consideration whenever you are fighting them. But I wanted to explain the statistics or the attributes of the enemies and their abilities before moving on. Okay, so finally getting into things that you can do on your turn. Now, each mission has an objective for the heroes to go after, and as well as a victory and defeat condition. In the very first mission, A Warm Welcome, you are supposed to have no enemies adjacent to the antenna by the end of the mission. Now, remember, ending mission was 3.1, so you have essentially 2 full rounds to be able to ensure that there are no enemies next to that antenna. Now, so the way that turns work are based off of this momentum dial here. And what you'll do is you'll essentially look at the first phase. It starts in phase 1, and look and see if there are any tokens there. In this case, there is the Spriggan token. So the Spriggans are going to go first, but because everyone's threat level is starting at 1, like it would for each mission, unless stated otherwise, we're not a threat to them. They're not even aware that we are here, because despite what all of us look like, even though we look like murderous monsters, we're actually not like warriors. Like, we're supposed to be just essentially colonizers. So you would check to see if there are any monsters or enemies, any heroes in their control area. And the Spriggans have a control area of 8, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're definitely in their control area, especially on this first thing. No matter where we're going to be on this map, we're going to be in their control area. But because that their objective is to guard that antenna, they're going to stay there. And what you would do in that case is, because they're not doing anything, they have action points of 4, so you would take their token and move it 4 spaces. So now it is on space 5. So then, now that you do that, you just move the phase dial over, and then you start doing that. So now we have Achab or Akab and Andromeda 2.0. Those are the 2 heroes that I put there. So now they get to do something. Really, in any order that you wish, if it's 2 heroes. So we get to decide. So I'm actually going to do Andromeda 2.0. And here is where I'm going to go into all of the actions that you get to do as a hero, but I must stress that the actions available to you, while you have all of them, you are limited by the action points, which is based off of the rapidity, which is the very top attribute on your character sheet on the right side. So now I'm just going to go into the different actions. Okay, so the first action, well, not the first action, one of the actions that a hero can do is, you guessed it, move. So whenever they are moving, what you're actually going to do is you're going to declare how many spaces you're moving, and the movement costs 1 action point per square you are moving. And how movement works is orthogonal, so it's up, down, left, right. You cannot move diagonally. So in this case, as Andromeda 2.0, I could be like, well, I want to move here. So I want to attack that guy. Well, if I wanted to do that, you would state that you are moving 4 spaces. So I would go 1, 2, 3, 4. And then what you do is you would then go to the momentum board, and she is right here, and I would go 1, 2, 3, 4. Because that's how many action points that I spent. Now her rapidity is 5, so that would give her 1 action point left to spend in this particular case. Now, of course, she has a gun, so I wouldn't move up on that person, but I wanted to explain how movement works. And also, there are enemy reactions. Now, what an enemy reaction is basically when your when your token goes past an enemy token, they get a potential chance to react. And it depends on kind of, their control area and your threat value. But you check to see if you are in their control area. In this case, of course, with the Spriggans, there's this 8. We're always in their control area. But once again, they're not aware of me because my threat value is still 1. But the hunters here, theirs is 3. Now, in this particular case, his control area is 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 3, or however. But I'm actually not in their control area because it's only 3. But that is something to be aware of whenever you are moving past them on the momentum board, is whether or not you are in their control area. And they do get a chance to react. Now, one thing to keep in mind is if they do react, let's say my threat value is 20 and I'm just a monster and I'm just slaughtering everything that moves. Well, whenever I do that and I move the 4 and I go past the Spriggans, well, they are going to react to me, so they would actually just do their action. But the thing to keep in mind is that whenever they do their action, you do not move their token on the control board or on the momentum board. So enemies might get to go a lot more than the heroes do, just based on what you're doing and your threat value. So that is, of course, movement. And but the key thing about movement is you cannot move diagonal. There are certain terrain that is like impassable. So for example, the antenna has light obstruction and impassable, so you can't move within its area. So the 2x2 square that it is in, you can't run past it. And then you declare how many spaces you are moving. Then you move that many spaces, and then you move your dial. So that's movement. Another action that you can do on your turn is attack. And how you attack is going to be dependent on the type of weapons that you have. But you can also attack barefisted if you really, really want to. I wouldn't advise it. So whenever you attack, the number of action points it costs is actually going to be dependent on what weapon you are attacking with. So let's take a quick gander at Andromeda 2.0's weapon, the Mors Pretiosa, and its abilities. So whenever you're looking at a card, it'll tell you on it kind of everything about it. So it'll say 3 AP. So to attack with this weapon, it costs 3 action points. The range is 2 through 6, so she actually cannot attack with someone directly adjacent to her. The ATB, that is the attack bonus, that's how many extra dice it gives you. And then the damage, it shows a symbol. Now, that does not mean it is 1 damage. That basically means that those are the icons that you're looking for. So, let me zoom out a little bit. In this case, I moved everything back, but she has a range. So she can shoot 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. She can shoot up to 6 squares away, 2 through 6. Now, of course, there still has to be line of sight. There has to be, and there are certain rules when it comes to that. Basically, you cannot shoot past enemies unless they're a specific size. So that's where the tiny can also come in. So, for example, if I was shooting through here, like let's say this Spriggan wasn't here and I was here, I could actually shoot this hunter because he is taller than the Spriggan. So that is something to take into consideration. And how you determine line of sight is you have to draw a straight line with no obstruction from one side of the box you're in to the another side of the box that the enemy is in. It's not the middle of the box, it's the side. So in this case, I could draw a straight line from this square that she's in, the middle of that, straight to that one with nothing in the middle. And that can come into play with bigger things that have obstruction. So for example, is that let's say that this enemy was here and she was here. So for example, I wouldn't be able to actually shoot him because he is behind this antenna that has obstruction to it, but he would be able to shoot me because he could pick here and go straight down the mine without actually touching the antenna, but I would not be able to do the same. So there are certain instances where being around something that gives you cover or line of sight obstruction actually matters. But in this case, she can shoot that Spriggan. Now the card said 3 AP, so we would move her dial 3 spaces, and then you would attack. So this is where you take into consideration her precision. And remember, her precision was 3. And now the gun gives an attack bonus of 1. So we would be rolling 4 dice, and we would look for the bullet icons right there. So basically we would roll, and haha, that was a garbage roll. So in this instance, she only got one success. All the other icons don't matter because they don't apply. But she has something called a sustained attack, which means that like she can also continue to do it and use that use the gear icon. So that is something, and actually you can look on the back of the gun, which, oh yeah, that is something else to take into consideration. If you have these cells, which are resources that you can spend those to boost the weapon. In this case, give it a plasma explosion, discard a red energy cell, plasma storm gets +1 attack bonus. So, and that's the attack title called Plasma Storm. So yeah. So then what you would do is I got one hit, and you would look at the Spriggan's defense value, which is 0 right up there, and it only has 1 health. So I only needed to get one hit on it. So I would kill this guy, but I do not get a threat value because killing tiny enemies don't give you one. However, one thing to now keep in mind is that because I activated against them, basically when you attack or when you do an ability that targets them, they are now they're now aware of you, regardless of your threat value. The only time you consider threat value is whenever you haven't directly interacted with the enemy. So now that I've killed one of them, they are aware, and so they would actually start doing something to attack back. But that's basically attacking, and that works the same way whenever you are attacking with a ranged weapon or a melee weapon. So that's attacking. One quick thing is that I slightly misspoke about her weapon in particular. And these special keywords and special rules are in the rulebook. So sustained attack means that as long as you roll a die with that symbol, you get to add another die to it. So for example, hers was the gear symbol. So because I rolled one of those, I can add another die. And as long as I actually keep rolling that, I can keep adding dice until I don't, to potentially inflict more damage. So let's just say I stopped there. That would be 3 damage, which would totally be overkill against that Spriggan, but I definitely want to clarify the sustained attack rule. Another action that you can do on your turn is you can use equipment and or use skills. I'm gonna combine these two into to one example, because basically using a skill of your character or using an equipment of your character is going to be dependent on the skill and the equipment. So for example, we're actually going to go away from Andromeda 2.0 and we're going to look at Alexandra. She is the healer. She has a drone healer's ASC, and on it, this is an equipment she has, it says 2 AP. So she could use this on her turn, spending 2 action points to do what it says on the card. Same for special abilities. So Andromeda, or not Andromeda, Alexandra has, let's see, who has, oh, there we go, we'll use ACAB. ACAB can use his inherent skill, which is at the top left of his skill sheet, called Tactician. Once per activation, ACAB can spend 1 action point to raise or lower his threat value by 1 point. So that's something that he can do on his turn. So using a skill or using an ability, you can do on your turn, spending a number of action points that the skill or the equipment dictates. Now there is an action that the enemies can do, besides actually doing what it says on their ability. So like the Spriggan, to do his Fire Fury, it costs 3 action points of his 4. They can also choose to engage a hero. So they can spend 1 action point if for a hero to in close combat, so adjacent to them, to actually engage them. And essentially what that means is, let's say ACAB was here and this hunter was here, they can spend an action point to put an engagement token on their character sheet. So that means that he is now engaged in fighting with this guy. So engagement basically means that he is locked into combat with him, meaning that he would not be able to attack other enemies. Now, with engagement, the heroes have an action called Disengage, and this costs 1 action point to do. Basically, whenever you do that, you spend 1 action point to move 1 space away. So let's say I spent the 1 action point to move over here to fight this Spriggan, and then I would just discard the engagement token. But that would basically mean that now the hunter would get what most D&D players would understand as an attack of opportunity, because I am moving away. So whenever you do a disengage action, it's not a free move away. You still get to move 1 space away, but they get 1 free attack on the hero based on what they would normally do. And you would actually resolve their attack before officially moving away. So you would do their attack, and then you would roll your defense dice, then you would move. So that is the engage action, engage a hero action that the enemies can do, and the disengage action that a hero can do. Alright, another action that you can do, this one's very simple, is wait. So, there is an important reason why you would wait, and it's going to be depending on the momentum track over here. So, for example, let's say this hunter token was all the way in phase 9, and Ahab, or ACAB, only has 6 action points. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, let's move it into phase 8 to make this example better. There is something called time shift, meaning that if the hero is doing an action, he must do an action that gets his token at least to touch the next phase area where an enemy token is at. So for example, with ACAB, I couldn't just move 2 spaces to go here, because then whenever the phase dial moves, that would mean he would get to go again. So he, with the time shift rule, he would have to do enough actions to be able to at least touch this icon. This is essentially to ensure that the enemies aren't just standing there and doing nothing the entire game while the heroes do a bunch of stuff and run around and loot, and the enemies are just dumb and standing there while the heroes are doing whatever they want. So in this particular case, Ahab would have to attack, or he would have to move, or he could wait. If he likes where he's at and he's actually waiting for Andromeda 2.0 to take a shot or do something, he can do the waiting action and literally just spend 6 of his action points just to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, just to be able to meet the time shift rule. Now, there might be an instance where the people that are going cannot actually make it to that. So in this case, if the hunter was there on phase 9 and Ahab only has 6 action points, then that's the furthest he'd be able to get to go. But if you can touch a phase zone with an enemy token, you must. So that is the waiting action and kind of explaining the time shift rule. Another action that you can do is focus. Now, focusing is something that you actually do before you roll a die. So going back to Andromeda's Andromeda 2.0 shot of that Spriggan there. Let's say that she's rolling 3 dice. She's actually rolling 4 dice. Well, most likely she's going to get 1 hit, and that will kill the Spriggan. So let's say she wants to focus. So what you do is you actually spend 1 action point to focus. And that means that whenever you roll a die, which that was garbage, but let's say I rolled 2 hits, you know, like a decent roll, you can actually take one of those dice and put it onto your player board to use at a later time. You don't consider the die that you take away. It doesn't count for anything. But in this case, she would still get the 1 hit, she would do her sustained attack, and yada yada, and she would kill the Spriggan. But at a later date, whenever she is rolling, let's say she's attacking the Hunter, who has actually 1 defense and some higher health, and she rolls like a badass, and gets, oh man, she gets these 3 hits, and it's like, oh, he already had 2 wounds. If only she got 1 more hit to be able to kill it. Well, because she focused, she can throw that die into the ring and use it later on. So that's focusing. Costs 1 action point. Lets you save some dice for a later turn. And that's another action you can do. Another action that heroes can do is collect. This costs 1 action point, and you can collect items that are on the board if they are in your spot or in an adjacent spot. So in the first mission, you have a loot token that is right here. And if you are on that spot or adjacent to it with no adversaries around you, you can spend an action point to collect it. In that particular case, that is a loot token. And whenever you do that, you just draw a resource card. And in this case, it would have been a trap. Oh no! Traps can happen. That sucks. It'll tell you what to do on the trap. But in this case, it actually wasn't a trap. It was a black energy cell. Energy cells basically give you a power that you can use to power up one of your items that actually requires this, or do an instant ability that just gives you something for the black energy cell. But that is something you can do, or there might be very specific resources or objects or things you want to collect. Depending on the mission, you can do that for 1 action point. Another action you can do is called the interact with an object action. Basically, some objects based off the mission will allow you to interact with it. In the first mission, you don't have anything like that, but in further missions, for example, the antenna. The antenna says that it is a switch that can be activated with an interact action, and then it'll do a certain thing. So how many action points that costs is going to be dependent on what you're interacting with, but that is something that you can do. So for example, in the future, when the antenna's there, you can go next to it, interact with it, and it says everyone gets a reroll token. That's a token that everyone gets that they can spend to reroll a die. So speaking of that, rerolling. So rerolling is kind of like a lot of other games, and each die can only be re-rolled once. So if you're attacking someone, an enemy, their ability of re-rolls go before you. However, you can spend your re-roll abilities or your re-roll tokens to re-roll what they allow you to re-roll. So it's only when you are initiating the re-roll that you have to accept the second result. So for example, if I was attacking an enemy that was immune to whatever, brain, So in this case, the enemy would make me re-roll these, and it's like, oh man, I didn't get my 2 hits like I had earlier. Well, you can still spend a re-roll to re-roll this die, even though the enemy just made you re-roll that. So just remember that if these were my results, and I needed a second fist, and I spent a re-roll token, and I still didn't get it, I could not spend another reroll token to reroll it. I would have to accept that result. So that's interacting with an object, and the object will determine the action point spent, and also talking about reroll. The second to last action that you can do is exchange resources. So if you have resource cards, you can exchange them with another hero that is adjacent to you, and that costs 0 action points. So they still have to accept what you're giving them. You can't just pawn something off on them, but that is an action you can do, is you can just give someone something that, and it has to be resource cards, so you can't give them a gun or an item, just the resource cards that are coming from that deck. Alright, and the last action that heroes can do is meditate, and this costs 3 action points. What meditation does is this allows you to remove all oblivion tokens that psychic or psionic heroes might get. These are oblivion tokens. Now, this is where I'm going to start getting into oblivion abilities. And Jukas is this hero right here. He is the only one that can do a psychic ability right now. But essentially, what it's going to do, or he'll get psychic abilities, is whenever an ability allows you to do psychic attacks like energy lash, it'll tell you how many action points you have to do, what you're testing. So you have to, succeed on the test, the mind test, and the attack, range 1 to 4, damage 3, and then it's going to tell you how many tokens you get for doing this. So Oblivion 2, for example, that's going to give him 2 tokens. Now, whenever you are doing an Oblivion ability and you have tokens, once you have those tokens, at the beginning of your turn, you have to make a mind test, and you have to get arrow icons equal to the number of Oblivion tokens you have. So in that case, if he used that one ability, he would get 2 Oblivion tokens. He would have to roll his mind, which is 4, and get 2 arrows, which in this roll he actually did not get. So if he did get it, he'd be fine. Essentially, psychic abilities are kind of like their mind be able to handle the intense power of energy that they're throwing around. But if he failed to do that, he would wipe all of his Oblivion tokens, and then he would draw a card from the Oblivion deck, which is this purple. So in this case, this is called time distortion. So it lasts for 6 phases. The psionic and any hero within 5 squares rolls 1 less die when they need to perform a defense test or a physical test. So they are very bad, and while the psionic or psychic abilities are really good and do quite a bit of damage, you're risking using those abilities. But that is where meditation comes in. So you can spend 3 action points to wipe all of those. So let's say he does that attack over and over and over, and he has 10, Oblivion tokens. Well, he's not actually going to be able to pass that at the beginning of his turn anyway. But let's say he had 10 and it is his turn, or he just got 10 and he has 3 action points left. He can spend those to meditate and wipe all of them. So that is an action that basically people who are going to be using psychic attacks are going to want to use. So that's it. That's all of the actions that you can do on your turn. All right, so the enemies. Basically, like I mentioned, the enemies have abilities themselves, and when their token is on the phase that the phase dial is on, they're going to do stuff. So whenever they're attacking, there's essentially a certain method that you use when determining what they're going to do. And so whenever, let's just say that the threat value, let's just say that they've been attacked. One Spriggan has been attacked, now that whole group is attacking. So what you do is that if you kind of go through a checklist, and luckily the back of the mission book or the rule book tells you exactly what to use them for the enemy's AI. So you basically check if they have a specific objective. In mission 1, they do. They want to protect the antenna, so they want to stay by it, because if there are no enemies by it by the mission 3 or by time 3.1, then the heroes win. So what they would do is they would check their control area, and if there's a TV greater, let's say there is, then they're actually going to attack them. So they have a checklist of what they're going to do. They will choose the closest hero, or they will choose, actually first they'll choose the hero with the highest threat value. So if Andromeda 2.0 had 5 threat while everyone else had 2, they would go after Andromeda 2.0. Even if ACAB was here and she was still there, they would still go after her because she had the highest threat value. Then, whenever they do go after them, they're going to want to spend action points in movement, or potentially not movement, in the shortest path possible. If they still can't get to them, then they'll still do the shortest path to try and get to them. Then what they will do is they will attack. And attacking, they just have basic attacks. They don't roll dice. So the Spriggans, for example, have this Fire Fury ability. And that it sends 3 action points, it's ranged 2 to 8, and the damage is 2 bullets, and it's a weak attack. So what you would do is you would roll your physical ability. So let's say they were attacking Andromeda 2.0. She has a physical defense of 3. She would roll 3. Now she's going to want the icons here to defend against that. So she would need 2 bullets to defend against that damage. Now, she did get 2 bullets. So yeah, so she would take no damage. But also, in this particular Spriggan, it says rough weapon. If the defense test obtains 2 bullets and a burst, this model is removed. Well, funny enough, that actually did happen. There are 2 bullets and 2 bullets in the burst, so that rough weapon actually blows up and kills that Spriggan. So that's essentially also how you defend against the attack. Melee attack is also the same. So like a hunter, for example, how you can tell the difference between a ranged attack and a melee attack is the icon right above the title. So Fire Fury has a bullet, that means it's ranged. Ritual Lance has a fist, that means it's melee. Melee works the exact same way, except they have to be relatively close to you, except for the Lance. It does have a range, has a reach 2, and then action points, that's the damage it's doing, and it causes bleed. Now, some attacks do give negative and positive statuses, and on the back of the reference sheet, it does explain the negative ones and the positive ones. I'm not going to go over all of those because there's a lot of them, but just be aware that those do exist. So essentially, that's kind of, you have a cheat sheet of what the enemies are going to do on their turn. Some missions will determine if that's going to be any different, if they act any different, or essentially some what they're going to do. So that's enemies and also defending against attacks. Okay, so let's talk about what happens when a hero gets knocked out. Basically, when a hero is determined to be knocked out is whenever they take wounds equal to their health, which was on the bottom of their attribute list. And essentially what you do is you just can place them prone, in the spot that they were knocked out. You would take their token, so let's say it was Andromeda 2.0, and you would put it on the outside of where that happened. So then you would decrease your threat value by 2, and all negative statuses, all that goes away. But what can potentially happen is that once the momentum token reaches a spot that they were knocked out on, they take a serious wound, and that's where this deck comes into play right here. So this is the serious wound deck, and so it could be stuff like Chillblain. Effect: when the hero performs a movement action, the first square entered must be determined randomly with the use of the orientation card. So there is an orientation card, and essentially you roll a die to determine where you're moving. But that you only draw a serious wound whenever this thing essentially makes one full round and lands on the spot if they're still knocked out. Now, they can come back into the fight as long as they receive one hit point. If you have a healer, they can go adjacent to them, heal them, give them at least 1 hit point back, and they would pop up. They would go back up in the spot that they were knocked down in, and then you would take their momentum token and you would place it in the adjacent spot of where the momentum dial is about to head to. So that's basically getting knocked out. Another thing to keep in mind when it comes to wounds is if you have 3 or more wounds, you have to start rolling a penalty die. And what the penalty die does is whenever you are rolling, dice, basically if you roll the penalty die, it eliminates a roll that has obtained the same result. So if I was rolling this, in this case, I actually showed it. Now, this penalty die shows the exact same icon as this one here. So it takes that die away, and I'm left with just these 2. Now, for the most part, you're going to only be rolling one penalty die, but in some instances, you can roll more. But just remember that you have to roll a penalty die for every roll if you have 3 or more wounds. Okay, so I've pretty much explained everything of what you can do on certain missions. Of course, there are extra things that could be different depending on which mission you're on. But at the end of the mission, when you complete the victory condition and get all your relative rewards and everything that you get for doing that, then you go to the colony phase. So in the colony phase, you can spend experience points to learn new skills, which of course the skills are going to be based off of your character's chart. And the chart is important. So now I can finally explain this. Each character has kind of 2 paths that they can go down. In this case for Jukas, it's Fury or ESP. But let's talk about Andromeda 2.0 because that's who we've mainly been talking about. She has a defense and a marksman class. Now, these 2 classes don't dictate really anything about rules, but might be a playstyle that accommodates the person playing that person or that hero. So the icons here with the blue half circle, those are the ones that you can start out on. So in this case, and you can see what they do on the back of the sheet, but let's just say for defense, you want to do that. You want to take that ability. So you look on the back and you find that icon, and it's down here called Shelter. It's during her token phase, the hero gains an endurance token. And it tells you at the bottom of that how much that ability costs. It costs 1 XP. And then there are 2 other types of skills that you can get. There are derived and there are evolved. Basically, if you look at this, a evolved ability is this single line. And that means that this ability, when you get that, it takes that ability away. They don't stack. So then if you look at the +2, Vigorous Block, it's evolved, it costs 2 XP. During her token phase, the hero gains an improved endurance token, so a +2. So they don't stack. So now you don't have the Shelter ability anymore, you have the Vigorous Block ability. But a derived ability, that is a separate ability. So if you went that route with the dotted line, you would still have your +1, and you would have this new derived ability called Counterattack. And it tells you exactly, it costs 2 XP, but now you would have Counterattack and your Shelter. So that is something to keep in mind when you're spending XP to level up, is the derived or the evolved ability, and that the inner circle really is kind of where you can start. And some don't even have abilities or paths. This one on Marksman just gives you a reroll token. So, and one thing I did kind of forget to mention is at the beginning of everyone's turn, you collect tokens based off what you're allowed. So for example, this Shelter, during her token phase, she gains 1 endurance token. The token phase is before you actually start doing actions, but yeah. So that is something that you can do on the colony phase. The other thing is you can spend required elements to upgrade the different rooms and areas on the ship, on the Genesis. Now, I'm not going to go too much into this, but in the rulebook, it does explain the kind of elements that you need to be able to upgrade to different levels. Each room has separate levels, so like the infirmary, has a level 1, level 2. They all have potentially, like the warehouse can go up to level 3. So you'll spend certain elements to be able to upgrade those to make them better. And you'll mark their levels on the colony sheet. The other thing is that those are the 2 really actions. You can spend experience and you can go and upgrade these rooms. The other thing that is important is that each crew member, and only the crew members who participated in the last mission, can go to one of these rooms. So, and only one of the rooms. And like I said, if you have other heroes like Molly or whoever, you can't have Molly go do something. It has to be the 4 heroes that went on the last mission. So, for example, the infirmary, you can discard a serious wound card, and it looks like settler placement. At level 1, only 1 person can go to the infirmary. The meditation room, gain a psionic shell token that you can use during the next mission. That can have 4 people going there. the training room, workshop, warehouse, laboratory, armory. Each person can go to one of these. But once again, the important thing to remember is that only the heroes who went on the last mission get to go do something on the ship, on the Genesis. So that is... you can also upgrade your equipment. That's going to require certain things. So, for example, to craft a level 2 like Family Mantle for Andromeda, on the back it tells you the crafting cost. There are different elements that you need to be able to craft and upgrade to a level 2. And when you do upgrade to a level 2, you don't have both. You would just find the level 2 Family Mantle card and replace this, and now you'd have the level 2. So those are things that you can do on the colony phase. And then that's pretty much it. That's the colony phase. After everyone has done what they've wanted to, spend their XP, gone to a room to do something, then you plan for the next mission. And that is how you play Sine Tempore. Now, this is a game with a lot of tokens, a lot of special abilities, a lot of skills, quite a bit of stuff to remember. But one thing that I highly recommend you do is go on Board Game Geek, like I mentioned, and find the custom colony sheet. This is a way better way to actually keep track of all the different heroes, because the 4 heroes you start with, like I said, you don't have to keep going mission to mission with them. There might be an instance where you're like, oh crap, Jukas is going to be horrible on this one, let's bring in another person, and you can keep track of them on this instead of having to keep erasing and remembering on the colony sheet. This lets you keep track of each hero and the levels of the special rooms, as well as the narrative missions. So go find this. The other thing I would recommend you do is go find, I typed in like Sine Tempore Player Aid, and it came with a list of all the different icons and what they do. There is one for that, but this one has everything from the expansions as well as the special wording. So for example, for Andromeda 2.0's gun, the sustained attack, that's on here and things like that. So the player aids that are available, I would highly recommend you get them just because that's going to be there. But yeah, I hope I did a good enough job of explaining how to actually play this game and at least how to get started on the campaign. I couldn't go really any further into it. I can explain the victory condition for the very first one because this is going to be the same for everyone. But as the campaign goes on, depending on what you do, it'll dictate the path of the narrative missions. But essentially, the first mission, when you complete it, it's going to unlock the second narrative mission, Welcome to the Jungle. It's going to give every hero 1 XP, and then that's pretty much it. Like, I'm pretty sure that that's all it gives you. But it does say that to go to a Welcome to the Jungle, you have to complete 2 exploration blue missions. And how you do that is there are, on the map, you can see, okay, well, we're in Landing Zone HQ. The blue missions are, the Heaven, what is that, Neptune Lake, or the Rift. And once you do 2 of those are the elements you're going to get. Then you can go and do Welcome to the Jungle. And so then after you do that one, you'll get, the victory or defeat, whatever it is, and then you'll continue on that way. So let's see. Yeah, I mean, I think that's everything that I can think of. Some minor things are, some of the enemies use the same model. So the Spriggans, for example, there might be a different type of Spriggan, but the model's going to be the same. So if you want to, share the difference, you take one of these, these plastic rings, and you put them around them to show, oh, well, those are the regular Spriggans, and then the ones who don't have the bases are the different ones. Some missions require you to do an enemy spawn at a certain point. You basically will take a deck of what the enemy spawn is telling you to use, and at that certain point you'll draw a card and you'll summon that type of enemy in that spot. But yeah, I think that is relatively everything and how to play this game. Of course, I didn't go into any of the expansions, Silico or the the 3 or 4 other ones. There are nemesis monsters that you can go and do nemesis hunts for. That's a whole separate thing. That's in the the black hole expansion. That's all in here. This is all their stretch goal stuff. So you can go in, and it does have special missions on what you want to do. The different nemesis missions that if you're real, like in the Primeval campaign, it tells you what to do and how you can go after these nemesis. They have their own decks and things like that. So, but yeah, I would recommend starting out with the 4 basic ones that come with the base game and level those up and do the story with them. At least get started, because whenever I first went to play this game, I mixed and matched, and then it was a mess. These are the 4 you get in the base game. Stick with those, and then once you're more comfortable, then you can move on and be like, okay, well, I don't really like playing with Alexandra. I want this person in, and you should be fine. Other than that, as always with my how to plays, if I made any type of mistake or you would like to clarify a little bit more, let me know in the comments below, and I can like and love it so it shoots up to the top so people who are watching this can see. Other than that, have fun, have a blast, go find your new world in Sine Tempore, and like, comment, share, and subscribe, and have a wonderful whatever time of day it is for you. Hey everyone, thank you for watching, and I really hope that you enjoyed the video. If you would like to see more of my content, go ahead and click that subscribe button and the bell to be notified whenever I upload any new content. If you feel like supporting the channel, you can go ahead and click that Patreon link to be taken to my Patreon, and any help is truly appreciated. Other than that, stick around for any other run-throughs or reviews or cool top 10s or whatever I feel like putting on. Other than that, like, comment, share, and subscribe, and have a wonderful whatever time of day it is for you.